Welcome to Berkeley Community Church on this beautiful Sunday morning after a little bit of a cold snap that we are still in, but apparently is going to leave us. Kind of reminds us that we are in Colorado, the seasons are changing, that our journeys are taking us through the seasons and through the days. All right, well, let's hear now from Mark 10, verses 2 through 16. Some Pharisees came, and to test him, they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" He answered them, "What did Moses command you?" They said, "Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her." But Jesus said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, he wrote this commandment for you. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." Then, in the house, the disciples asked him again about this matter. He said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them, and the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant, and he said to them, "Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it." And he took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. So in this text, I am less interested in what it's about and more interested in the method that Jesus used to address divisiveness. Calling out hardness of heart, holding up the ideal, and then introducing a new angle that's grounded in justice and equality. Well, I think that's a pretty interesting model for managing our divisiveness in our world. And if that's what it means to vote, like if really that's what it meant to vote, and if that's what it meant to debate, and if that's what it meant to stand up and have freedom in the pulpit, then that means that there's a whole new world out there. It's not just for somebody to stand up and tell everybody what to do. That doesn't help anything. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't even encourage any sort of conversation. But if we use Jesus' method in looking at our political system, and again, this is the piece that I'm using right now because it's on my mind because of these last few weeks, but there's lots of ways that this applies to our lives. So when it comes to heart hardening, how do we soften our heart? In theory, this is what we're asking of our leaders. This is what we're expecting of them, is to sort of soften their hearts so that they can get things done for us, right? And yet, we ourselves are sometimes not very skilled, so that it's not terribly surprising that our leaders reflect that. So we can soften our hearts. How about holding up the ideal? Do we have any ideals for our country? Do you have any notions of what might be an ideal for the country? The final part of Jesus' process, so hardness of heart, so we can work on softening our hearts, holding up the ideal, and then the third part was that whole promoting values piece, that turning it upside down so that the values of equality and justice rise up, and those happen to be the values that Jesus is always preaching, the values of equality and justice, and it happens to be a value that permeates the whole New Testament, and it certainly permeates my personal faith journey. But yours may be different. There may be other faith values that thread through your journey that have been ones that repeatedly come up for you. That when you have to make a decision, that's the value that you fall on to try and figure it out. And so without hardening your heart, how can you lift up the ideal using your values to undergird it? Because what matters is not that we use our faith and our politics to bulldoze each other, but that we use our faith to inform our politics. Instead that we use our faith to undergird our politics, so that we use it and we call out the places where our heart is hard, And we call out the places where our value actually does not sit with our perspective, that those two are actually not in balance with each other, but are in conflict with each other, and then do the work to unpack that. Because our faith is certainly supposed to guide us in all aspects of our life, not just when we're sitting here, but in all aspects of our life. So, as your pastor, I challenge you from this pulpit, with the freedom that you have granted me, to exercise that freedom for yourselves in the coming months and really spend some time thinking about this passage and how this passage can help inform your process, your votes, your thoughts, and what work you might do to engage the political process. Joyful, joyful.